Welcome to our session this morning. We're here to present best practices and innovative approaches in clinical research. I am Teresa Kump. I am the Division Administrator and Research Manager for the Department of Pediatrics, Pulmonary and Sleep in Milwaukee, Wisconsin at the Medical College. I've been a research professional for a really long time, over 30 years, so I'm really excited to be here presenting this information with Misty.
Hi, and I'm Misty Thompson. I apologize. We come back together and I pick up something, so I apologize for my voice today. I work for Indiana University School of Medicine at Riley Children's Hospital in Indianapolis. I've been in research for 6 years. Prior to that, I worked in the CF clinic at Riley. And that's about it. We have no relationships to disclose for this presentation. Our objectives today are to identify one QI project or best practice that you can implement at your site over the next year. To describe the importance of reimagining the research team during times of uncertainty to increase sustainability, and to assess different approaches to the systemic barriers in clinical research for the underrepresented minority groups.
I was really excited to be, reviewing all the abstracts that were submitted for this workshop, and I have to do it every year. Please think about it now. It's your time to think about what you might be doing next year for NACFC. Submit your abstracts. Work with your colleagues. It's just a really great opportunity for everyone to do these things. So the material we have presented to you today are really just fantastic. I think everybody's going to love it. So we're going to have a talk on rebuilding a culture of research. I think we've all been faced with some challenges, unrelated and related to the pandemic. There's going to be a talk on the CF patient registry and some quality improvement strategies for that, how to help develop a sustainable team, again, as we have turnover and different barriers, systemic barriers to participation for research participants, and enhancing clinical research practices. So I think we're all going to be really excited. You'll notice, and I've made this joke, we have 2 Lauras, 2 Katies, and an Alex today presenting. So if your name is Laura or Katie, you're in for next year, no problem. But we also accept all names. So please please enjoy this presentation. First up, we have Katie Polk from National Jewish. For the space bar. Okay. Either one.
Okay. Good morning. Hi, I'm Katie Posch, and I am going to be presenting today on rebuilding a culture of research. Oops, that's not the right button. There we go. I have nothing to disclose. So this was said to me by a clinic nurse about a decade ago. They are people with CF, are here for clinic, not research. And this has really stuck with me over those many years because at the time it really reinforced what I was thinking about clinic and research and being 2 very, very separate entities. And while they're also not. And so the goal of this project that we were working on is to explain why and how we went about improving the culture of research at our center. So first, what is a culture of research? If anyone's taken the ACRP exam, you may have heard about the Belmont report, but really it established a very formal distinction between what can go on in clinic and what can go on in a research setting. And at the same time, this distinction kind of gets a little blurred where research is taking place in the clinical care setting. So some of you who may be participating in the Patients and Predict trial know that research does happen in clinic. And especially for rare diseases like CF, there are several clinical trials that take place in clinic. And so while the purpose of clinical research, is to generate generalizable knowledge for future patients, and medical care aims to promote the well-being of an individual patient, we really want to have this integration between clinical research and medical care, and it will involve the entire team, from the researchers, the clinicians, and anyone involved in our health care system. So Dr. Taylor Kauser is one of our PIs and providers at our center, and she presented on this topic at the TDN spring meeting this year. She really spoke on the culture of research in the context of the generic therapies and what's needed to lay the groundwork for this next phase in clinical research. And key to her presentation was what needed to happen within a team to best address what was needed to do to enroll in these more challenging trials, and how can we integrate the clinic and the research teams to best focus on the care of people with CF. And so luckily for us, we had already started working on this project with our QI initiative. So to start, we have to look back to figure out where we should go. So over the last decade, our patient population has grown from 236 adults to 521, and we currently have over 600 people with CF in our patient registry. And at the same time, the reach of our research has also doubled, with less than 100 study subjects in 2011 to over 228 to be exact, in last year. And that's 44% of our patient population who is participating. And then during this same time period, our multidisciplinary team has grown from 15 caregivers and researchers to 34, and we have had periods of significant turnover. On the research side, we've had 22 different RCs, and some have stayed for 3 months, some have stayed for 29 years. And not with the same amount of turnover, but to handle our growing patient population, the clinic team has also grown, and we've added many new positions, including additional RTs, social workers, and then what we call our patient navigators, who are kind of our MAs who handle a lot of the behind-the-scenes work. And then during the last 2 years, there was a pandemic that sent everybody into very small 2-inch squares, that really this whole pandemic really hampered our team dynamics. They paused clinical research, and then we also moved the clinic visits to telehealth. So kind of where does all of this lead us? So this amount of growth and change, coupled with the recovery from the COVID pandemic, really led us to realize that we were a very disjointed team between clinic and research. And there was a lack of knowledge about what each other does, and the fact that we are both contributing to the care of people with CF. So in short, we figured this was time for us to rebuild. So we developed this project to kind of guide it, and this is our aim. And so we believe that through education about each team member's role, guidance on the different team processes, and participation in events outside of the workplace, we can create a collaborative and cohesive team focused on improving a culture of research, ultimately resulting in the same common goal to care for people with CF on a path to a cure. So at our center, we are very lucky to have 2 QI teams. The clinical QI team is really focused on data from the registry, where we've worked on projects such as low BMI and increasing those quarterly visits. And then the EQUIP team, has developed projects on educating our patients on their mutations and encouraging new and more people to participate in research. And so this was that's not the right button. This joint project was really how we could look at each other, and so what we did was we developed a quiz, and we administered this quiz. We had 2 quizzes. One went to the clinical team, and we asked them about the research studies that are available for people with CF at our center, the number of people that we have participating in our research, and just kind of what are their views of the clinical team members and what is their view of research. And then on the other side, we asked the research team kind of best practices for clinic visits and who and what is responsible for the different activities that happen during a clinic visit. We also asked our providers questions, and Alex is going to be talking about that a little bit later. So we quizzed the clinical team. This quiz was answered by the entire multidisciplinary team. Looking at the results, we did notice that just some general clinical research knowledge, including how our patient population participates in research and what even are the research opportunities available to our patients, was severely lacking. So averaging these scores, their average was a 58%. So we knew from these results that we just needed to go back to basics with some education. So luckily, at the same time that we were doing this project, our clinic space was relocated to a dedicated CF-only workspace. So in this room, there was a leftover blank whiteboard that, as you can see on the left, just sat there. And so we took this opportunity and really transformed this into a research board to highlight key things that were happening on the research side in hopes of educating our clinic staff. So as you can see, kind of what the board on the right now looks like, we did a study spotlight where we just kind of highlighted some inclusion, exclusion of current studies that we were doing. We did a get to know where each of the research coordinators kind of wrote a little blurb about themselves. And we also have a list of all of our active studies. We have photos and contact information for all the RCs with their phone numbers, their emails, and then the photos so that you can actually put a name to a face, because after COVID, a lot of people only saw this much of them. We also added a research fact of the week, and we added a journal club where we were able to highlight some of the research papers that our CF team had been published. So after 6 months of updating this board, we also were able to increase the presence of the RCs in clinic. So we re-administered the quiz. There were a couple drops, as you can see, but we think we can explain this away because in the 6 months from pre to post, we had 4 RCs leave our team and 1 new hire join us. So when we asked the clinic who these people were, some of the research staff didn't even know who everybody was. And then additionally, with the specific study details on the post quiz, I did change a study number from 104 to 105. And even if you're not doing those studies, even I get confused on what study is what. Is it the rollover? Is it the extended label? So, it's confusing to a lot of people. However, we did have quite a significant gain in just the general research knowledge, specifically the number of research opportunities that we had available. And I like to think that maybe this is now showing an appreciation in the amount of research that we are doing at our center. So then it was the research coordinator's turn, and we also gave them a quiz, and you can see the research team did fare quite a bit better in their knowledge, and it's likely due to the research coordinators needing to have some level of clinical knowledge for enrollment into the clinical trials. Additionally, the RCs have been in clinic because of recruiting for studies or for registry consents. And so we are already more familiar with kind of what goes on in the clinic space, whereas I don't think I could tell you any of the clinic staff that has made it upstairs to the research unit. And so while the average score across all of these categories was at 86%, there were still areas for improvement in knowing who does what in clinic. So similarly to what we did in the clinic space, in the research unit, there is a blank cubicle wall near the entrance that was transformed into a clinic board where we used it to educate the research staff. And similarly, again, we highlighted the team with all the providers, the nurse practitioners, and the rest of the ancillary staff, again, with contact phone numbers, emails, and their pictures. And we also added a day in the life of what does each position do during their day, especially on the days when there's not clinic and they are still there. And again, a superstar, get to know your coworkers. Okay, so on our post quiz, administered 6 months later, there were some significant drops that we noticed. This most likely can be explained by the fact, again, that from pre to post, 4 RC team members left and 1 new team member joined. And so we thought maybe this does not show the correct amount of onboarding for the newer team members that joined our team. However, when we corrected for only looking at those coordinators who took the quiz before and after, you can see the responses were much better, except for 1 significant drop, and this was because of the increase in role of the respiratory therapist from the pre to the post. They took on a lot more responsibilities in those 6 months, and so when we asked, what does the RT do? There were many answers instead of what they were doing the 6 months before. But we did have some really nice increases in just knowing what some of the processes were. So overall, this project really showed gains in the knowledge base for both the clinical and research teams in both self-reported gains and in improvement in the quiz scores. The self-reported gains were assessed by just asking on the post quiz on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being nothing at all to 10 being I could join their team right now. Both clinical and research teams reported an increase in what they knew about each other. And then again, when you look at the average scores, there were increases on both, with the research team increasing by 6% and the clinical team increasing by 15%. So as I said at the beginning of this presentation, our goal was to educate, guide, and participate. So we used the quizzes and the boards to educate and guide, but we also had some fun. So part of rebuilding our culture of research is to integrate the teams by really including everyone in the activities, and there was more likely a sense to be engaged in what the other person is doing outside of work, to know that the other person that you were working with on the other side of research or clinic is important, and that you should appreciate the things that go on outside of your cubicle. So as part of this, we did some monthly activities over the course of the last 6 months, and we are in Colorado, so we are very fortunate to be able to get outside quite a bit. But on this quiz, we just said, have you participated in any CF activity over the last 6 months? 5 out of our 7 providers did, 8 of our 9 researchers did, and 12 out of the 13 clinical team members did. So what did we do? So we had, like I said, activities about once a month. Most of them were outdoors, and most of them were active, like runs or hikes. But we also had a Christmas in July potluck, and we attended our local CF chapter soiree. And all of these were activities that we did were free or had a very minimal cost or a donation of food, like to the potluck. So we tried to encourage everybody to get outside and get to know each other in a more fun and relaxed environment than sitting in the clinic room. So in conclusion, I think we were able to take away some kind of key points to this. We're going to continue providing education to the entire team, whether it's onboarding, whether it's when we have a new study. We want to make sure that we are educating each other about what's going on with clinic or with research. So we're going to improve the onboarding with the new team members, show them where we have these boards, where you can look if you want to find information on each other or what's going on in the clinic or up on the research unit. And really, we're going to keep offering opportunities to engage with each other outside of the workplace. We have some things that we're doing here, and then with upcoming holiday season, we're going to plan on getting together again. And so really, and finally, having a culture of research is really more of, we're not going to have a wall between clinic, research. It's really more of a cycle where the outcomes of the science are kind of dictating what you can do in the clinic, and the clinical care outcomes are dictating where we can go with the science. So it's all very cyclical, and we're going towards the same goal, whether you're in research or in clinical care. So I would like to thank both of our QI teams, the CQI team and the EQUIP team. And that's it. So thank you very much.
Great job, by
Thank
the way.
you.
So we do have a question. If anyone else has any questions, please go ahead and submit them, and we'll get them answered. So would you be willing to make the quizzes you used available as an example for our own clinics?
Sure. Some of them were very clinic or research specific based on the studies that we were participating in or the roles of the different providers. We have a very large team at National Jewish just because we have so many patients and so many research subjects, but I will definitely have that template available for anybody who would like to know what we asked.
And who takes on the coordination of these extracurricular fun activities?
So, yeah, we did it as part of our QI team. So the CQI, so the clinical QI team, if you happen to notice in the picture, we had a Teletubby type sunshine at the top, who with our PI is the sun. So we called ourselves the Sunshine Adventure Club, and we just kind of, you know what, we're like, it's a beautiful weekend. How about, especially in Colorado in the summer, we're able to go hiking. So we picked a Saturday once a month and said, all right, we're gonna meet here, trying to make it central for all of our different care team members. So we were able to go to the foothills, and sometimes it was 20 minutes for some people, sometimes it was only 5 minutes for others, but to make things central and kind of rotate around what we're able to do. And I think that was really the key for how we did our activities.
Did you see any improvement in subject enrollment after these initiatives?
Not so much with subject enrollment, but our nurses became more engaged, our clinic nurse coordinators became more engaged, and were recommending, oh, hey, when we were doing a hospital exacerbation study, oh, hey, this person's going to the hospital, they knew to contact me. When the clinic found out that someone was pregnant, they knew to contact Alex. So just having the clinic staff more aware that this research is going on just funneled more people to us, so it was kind of more like an internal referral system than what we've been talking about at all the other meetings where you're referring to other sites. It was clinic who these patients may not know how much research we do either. We've been trying to improve that over the last several years, but just to be able to internally funnel these people to us was really helpful.
Did you have any additional barriers, apart from employee turnover, that made these quizzes a challenge?
I mean, part of it was my fault when I changed some of the questions. So, but really everybody responded to the surveys when I sent them out. We just did it through RedCap, and it was just sent to everybody, and it was semi-anonymous. Nobody knew who it was, but I was able to track who hadn't submitted it yet. So I was able to say, hey, can you do this? Can you do this? Some of the folks who we did not do a pre-post on, we had one of them was on maternity leave at the beginning, and then another one was on medical leave at the end. So we just kind of were able to, we made it work. And just the fact that we actually had everybody, and the fact that it was both clinic and research really helped that the clinical QI team was able to encourage their clinical coworkers to do it, whereas the research team, we were like, we see you all the time, let's also do this. Let's get it done so we have some good data for this.
Did you involve your families too?
We did not. We kept it just as improving the culture of research. We have increased the signage now that we have that dedicated we have a dedicated clinic space now. So we were able to add some interested in research, scan this QR code, and one of the research coordinators will get back to you. But for the culture of research, we just wanted to refocus on building our team.
We're really excited that there's a lot of questions. I don't know how Katie
I'll
feels
just keep
about it.
talking. Yeah.
So we might hit a couple more if we don't get to all of them.
I'm
please,
here.
Please find Katie, because
I'm not going
at
anywhere.
the very end of the session, if we have more time, then we'll try to hit those back. But
It's so exciting.
I know. I know, right?
So great job.
Right? Yeah.
Do you have any difficulty to make your boards alive?
So I'm kind of crafty. And luckily, on the other side, the person who was in charge of the clinic board was also crafty, so I busted out my Cricut and made some cute things. But it was definitely a team effort, which is why we set up that rotation we set up a bi-weekly rotation of who was updating what activities. So we updated the board every 2 weeks, and each research coordinator or clinic staff, at one time, you would do your get to know, and then at another week system, you would do the research fact of the week, and then at another time, you would do the study spotlight. So what study are you working on that you would like the clinic staff to really know about? Especially if, some of these drug trials where the clinic staff may not always know who's on a study drug. We try and communicate that, but sometimes it just gets thrown over with their immediate clinical concerns. And so we were able to do that, and we keep it updated. We are quite active publishers, and so it's just like, all right, yay, you got a new paper done, and put it up on the board. So we tried to do that as often as we could. Okay, perfect. Yes.
Okay. So again, please find Katie, because these are all fantastic questions. That's great. Yep. Next up, we have Katie Howe, and she's coming to us from Baylor College of Medicine in Houston. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name's Katie Howe. I'm the clinical research lead for Baylor College of Medicine and Texas Children's Hospital out of Houston, Texas. And I will be speaking today about enhancing clinical research practices utilizing EquipCR within our research team. I have nothing to disclose. So as we all know, there are various factors that affect the success of clinical research programs. Rapid turnover of research coordinators due to the lack of upward mobility is a continuous issue across the country and has affected the productivity and team dynamics of our research team specifically. Moreover, the complexity of clinical trial startup at our very large institution has led to unwanted delays as well as prolonged and poor clinical trial enrollment. So we were able to utilize the EquipCR resources. Individually, I know that before I joined the team, they actually did the true coaching through EquipCR, but we utilized the resources individually and completed the clinical research program assessment in spring of 2021, right after I joined the team in March of 2021. So team members identified with this clinical research program assessment identified 3 key areas of growth and development. Our team is comprised of coordinators, primary investigators, as well as some of our research management. We do meet monthly to discuss action items, and from the 3 key areas of growth, we split these into 3 subcommittees, so there were different research team members on each one of the committees. So the areas included research coordinator turnover, which I know that we all have experienced a lot lately, clinical trial startup, and team dynamics. So in regards to research coordinator turnover, we actually revamped our job description to include the professional growth and development provided by the foundation and the TDN. This has helped us really not sell the job, but explain to the coordinator that there is more than the research coordinator role at your site institutionally, and that there's a lot of room for professional growth and development. We also streamlined what the RC position entails. We are very upfront with our coordinator or with our applicants when we interview them, because as most of you know, CF coordinators do pretty much everything. So you need to know that you're going to be doing some regulatory, you're going to be doing some startup, you're going to be at least knowledgeable in contracts and budgets. But even in the research visit setting, you're responsible for pretty much everything: vitals, ECG, PFTs, sweat, phlebotomy. And so we really are upfront with that, because we have had that quick turnover of losing a coordinator after 3 or 4 months, because they said, this is not what I expected. This is not what I wanted out of the position. We also created and implemented new interview questions, as well as an interview rubric for the standardization of applicant evaluation. And we did this mainly because a lot of the time the RCs will interview the applicant first, and then the rest of the team, the PIs will, and as a larger group, will interview the applicant at a different time. So that way we just had standardization across the board. And not only that, we also standardized the interview process to expedite the time from an initial interview to job offer, because we were finding that not everyone was able to interview the applicant, and then we were taking 2 weeks to interview, for everyone to interview the applicant, and then to go through the HR process. And so it definitely expedited the process in general. We updated our orientation process as well in our onboarding. Some of the feedback we were getting from new RCs was that they didn't feel like we were checking in with them as often as we should have been. And so we do this on a weekly basis now, and just making sure that their training is timely and they feel that they're being supported. Additionally, because of turnover and knowing that turnover will occur, we standardized the transfer of studies from RC to RC. Even if it's, 2 RCs that are going to be staying and the study needs to be transferred over, we standardize that process as well. So this is just the rubric that we use. We identified 5 characteristics that we really wanted to focus on when interviewing an applicant. So their leadership style, what their commitment looks like, empathy, integrity, and community. And I'm not going to go through all this. I can send this out if anyone is interested. And this actually came from one of my good friends who is a professor at UT Austin, and they run their own very successful lab, and it's a rubric that, of course, we don't want to recreate the wheel. So I was like, hey, you have a very successful volunteer program in lab at UT Austin. Can I borrow this? So when we move on to clinical trial startup, I know that there are multiple CTMS systems that do clinical trial like startup tracking very well. But as we all know, that they don't include everything that goes on in clinical trial startup. There are so many pieces. And so I created just a basic tracker to ensure timeliness of institutional and industry submissions. And so we received regulatory packet this day. This is due this day, this is due this day, this is when we received the contract, this is when the contract was sent to our contracts office and then sent back to our sponsor when it was redlined. And so that we could just kind of see, not only that, we're and still are having issues with our contracts and budgets office. So if we have this data to go back to them and be like, why are you taking so long? We actually have that time. We also created an industry versus non-industry startup algorithm, because we know that those are 2 very different things, and they also include different departments within our institution. So Texas Children's is interesting in the fact that we are housed in Texas Children's Hospital, but most of us are employed by Baylor College of Medicine, and we are in the pediatric clinic. And so the adult clinic is off-site. And so we work with Baylor College of Medicine, Texas Children's Hospital, Baylor St. Luke's Medical Center. And so there are multiple people involved in many different departments that are involved.
So with that, we identified departmental contacts involved in clinical trial startup to have a better understanding of institutional standards for greater efficiency. So it's the common thing, like there's miscommunication. What we were expecting out of them and what they're expecting out of us was not the same. And so we were like, well, so we have a better understanding of what your process is. Can you come and join one of our meetings? And we have meetings, research meetings every Wednesday morning. And so we invite them to come to that meeting and then give us an overview. If you haven't done this with your IBC, definitely do it. It's a very, very interesting and fascinating department. And it's also, we will be all using the IBC a lot more. And so having that initial relationship is very good. For team dynamics, we re-implemented weekly huddle times with PIs and RCs for better team communication. The huddle time started in 2016, but lacked utilization over time. And as we all know, with the pandemic, it needed, during and after the pandemic, they needed a lot of improvement because they are offered both Zoom and in person. And so when we were all not in office, they just weren't being utilized. And also with increase in team turnover, it's a way for the PIs and the RCs to get to know each other a little bit more. And so the objectives for the huddle times: basic clinical trial overview, source docs, reviewing source docs and getting signatures, query resolutions, and wellness check-ins. And so we're in the process of making sure that every coordinator checks in with every PI every so often, even if you don't have to talk about your specific trial, but it's just more of a well check. How are you doing? What's going on in your life? So it's just better team dynamics overall. And then additionally, we created a shared mission statement. We actually created ours first, but it does align with the mission statement of the clinical care team. We kind of did them almost simultaneously, so they were very cohesive. And so what the clinic team's mission was being protected to the patients aligned with what the research mission was. So in terms of huddle schedule, this is kind of what it looks like. So every Monday, I have a meeting with all the coordinators. They indicate which PI they need to talk to, and then I send out a huddle schedule every Monday after that RC meeting, letting each PI know which coordinator needs to meet with them or not meet with them and what it's about. And then the following week, which is still in process, keeping up with letting me know, did you keep your huddle time or not? And how are they being utilized, and are they being utilized effectively? So this is our team mission. The Baylor College of Medicine Cystic Fibrosis Research Team is committed to achieving optimal health and quality of life for all people with CF by bringing forth cutting-edge, evidence-based therapies through excellent research practices, teamwork, integrity, and compassion. And this is a picture from, I'm sorry, Emily. I know you don't like this picture. This is a picture, we were actually able to get out and do one of our Wednesday morning meetings at breakfast. This was very early. I know a lot of our providers have clinic that day. And so this was like at 7 or 7:30 in the morning before the workday, because it was the only time that worked for everyone. Houston is very large, as you all know. So we all live in various parts of Houston, so getting together is fairly difficult if it's not during the work day or right before work or right after work. So some of our key findings and lessons learned, we did do a survey regarding the utilization of our huddle times, and 78% of the team indicated an increase in huddle time utilization within the last year, which resulted in PI signatures being received and queries being resolved in a timelier manner. And this is, one, obviously very important, but two, because our adult team is located elsewhere, it's sometimes hard to get those adult signatures unless we drive over to their clinic, and it's just, parking is also a nightmare in Houston, so that's also not ideal. 67% of the team also found that meeting during huddle time was helpful in improving the communication between PIs and RCs, and this is especially for patient recruitment, or if you're having issues with a patient instead of just waiting during like the research meeting on Wednesdays. They were able to just like talk to the PI a little bit quicker and get things resolved a little bit quicker. This also improved the communication with our industry sponsors, resulting in positive feedback and stronger relationships, which has been very, very good for us in terms of solicitation, receiving solicitations, and just having a good relationship with our sponsors in general. We do have which most people do, but I feel like it kind of falls by the wayside, that you need to respond to your sponsors within 48 hours. You need to respond to your PIs within 48 hours, and vice versa, and it's just proven to be very beneficial. It also has improved communication with all of our CF providers, so all of our providers aren't PIs, and so we send out, when we begin a study, we send out a synopsis of what the study entails, basic eligibility criteria, and that way it can help with patient recruitment, especially if it's a study that you can recruit directly in clinic. And so it's just improved that as well. And overall, it just has increased morale and communication of the research team in general. We have multiple meetings, but I have a meeting with the coordinators once every 2 weeks, approximately, give or take, if our schedules allow it. And I use that as a safe zone for them. They can tell me whatever they want, and it will not, unless it's a major issue, I don't necessarily, then I'll take it to the PI or our over supervisor. But otherwise, it's a safe zone for them, so they can talk to me about pretty much anything, if their bandwidth, if they feel like they're being stretched too thin, and that's a way for me to be able to advocate for them as well. So that's been really good. So what are our next steps? We did a follow-up clinical research program assessment, and just to see if there was a shift in what the focus areas of improvement need to be now after completing that in the spring of 2021. Obviously, budget and contract process is still on top of our list, and that is mainly because that department has had full turnover twice within like a year. And so people that we were used to working with, and they were used to working with specific sponsors, know nothing now, and it's a brand new relationship that's having to be built. Katie, I'm going to be asking you for your slides and a lot about culture of research, but the culture of research within our institution. So trying to get more institutional buy-in with our patients. In 2023, our plan is to create like quarterly research newsletters or email blasts, MyChart blasts, anything we can do to just let them know. And Katie, similar, like having a QR code that you can just like tap in clinic and pulls up all the research that's currently active at our site, obviously with contact information. Team dynamics is always going to be on there. Also cultural research with our clinical team, so just getting them more involved. Team dynamics is ever changing and always needs to be worked upon. So always doing that and just trying to like actually get out and enjoy activities more together. And leadership development, which is great. I was really happy to see that part come through on the program assessment form, just because we are finally fully staffed. Yay. And so I'm able to like help with that leadership development with my RCs more now. And give them that support. We will also be creating a tool to measure new and current RC satisfaction at the 3, 6, 9, and 12-month marks, just so we can kind of stay on top of anyone that may not be satisfied with what they're currently doing, and just kind of seeing how we can help them if they aren't happy with their current position. Mainly because outside of performance evaluations or the 90-day evaluation for new RCs, we're checking in, but it's just going to be a little bit more standardized. And then continue to use the measurement tools provided by EquipCR, and we all just got our TDM metrics report, yay, to go through that and to gather further data in 2023 to continue the process and still focus on those areas of improvement from the program assessment form. I want to thank you. This is our team, both adult and pediatric, and except for one, we had one more person join just recently. So thank you, and that is all I have.
No
no questions? Oh, there are questions.
That's right.
Dang it. Great job, and congratulations on being fully staffed.
Thank you. Yeah. It's a weight off my shoulders.
Can you provide an example of how you standardize study transfers between RCs?
Yeah, so we actually have a checklist. So have you, let's take, well, any sponsor or any trial in the first place. So have you educated them on the subject binders? Do they know who the subjects are? Do they have an enrollment list? Have you gone through the regulatory binder with them? Have you contacted your CRA in order to get them access to all the vendor websites? So pretty much there's just a full-on checklist. There are things that I'm responsible for with that transfer, and then what the RC, the lead RC is directly responsible for transitioning over to the new RC.
Okay. We have another question. At your Wednesday morning meetings, did that include only coordinators, or did you include the PIs? Or did the coordinators just meet with the PIs during the huddles?
No, so we have only RC meetings on Mondays, and that's with myself and then our research manager, one of our research managers, and then on Wednesday mornings, it's the entire team. So it's both adult PIs, coordinators, research management, and pediatric PIs, so it's the entire 12 of us, 12 or 13 of us. Also, our one of our nurse coordinators. And then huddle times are separate throughout the week for each of the PIs, so multiple meeting times.
So I'm just going to ask you, are the huddles, are they set times each week, and the coordinator just knows that if they need their PI, then that's the time that they would go to them? They don't have to find a different time each week to try to
Correct, they
do
are
it?
set times.
Okay, that's helpful.
Yeah.
That's great.
Is that all?
Yeah, that's it for now, but
Thank you.
thank you. Next up, we have Laura from Rainbow Babies and Children's Hospitals in Cleveland, Ohio.
Good morning. I want to thank Katie number 1 and Katie number 2. I am Laura number 1. Laura Backey. I'm a research coordinator at University Hospitals of Cleveland, Rainbow Babies and Children's Hospital. Oh, I guess I should mention that the title of my presentation is Developing a Sustainable Team Model in Uncertain Times. And this talk, this plan that I'm going to talk to you about was created by Kate Hilliard with input from Dr. Erica Rush. I have nothing to disclose except that this is my first NACFC and my first presentation. I'm a tad nervous. All right, get that out of the way. You guys will probably figure that out in a minute. Anyway, okay, let's figure out how to work this. Okay. Recently, research teams have faced new challenges, placing an increased emphasis on teamwork. So the pandemic came along and just threw a wrench into everything we knew practically overnight. We had to change what we were doing. It required our teams to do more with less. With that, it caused unexpected absences. So in the early days of the pandemic, if anybody had any kind of respiratory symptom at all, they had to stay home. They had to test. We had to wait for the results. So they were out from anywhere from 1 day to 2 days to 14 days or longer. Also with that, probably at most hospitals, members of our research group had to be tasked to other areas of the hospital to help out with shortfalls that they were experiencing there. So it really, it was a big interruption in the way that we do things. Our group at that time adopted a hybrid work environment. So we were allowed to work from home and come into the office, which fortunately we are still doing today, which everybody loves. Along with the pandemic, the CF research has a changing study landscape. There are more early phase trials with long study visits. It's not uncommon to have a 12-hour PK day now. And there are also more studies that are targeting a smaller population, people that aren't eligible or responding to Trikafta. So at our center, we have about 200 patients, and out of that, we have maybe 10 or 20 that meet that criteria. So it's a small pool to recruit from. It makes it challenging. Okay, this is our team. Right now, we have 5 RCs, 3 focus on CF, 2 focus on non-CF. That includes asthma, sleep studies. We have 2 Reg Cs. We have a support service team and a research operations and finance manager. So like probably most centers across the country, our original model was we had 1 RC and 1 Reg C assigned to each study. And I'm happy to say, after hearing some of these other presentations, I don't have to do regulatory, which is wonderful. I can really appreciate that now. The RC was responsible for all aspects of the study, everything, scheduling, recruiting, EDC, source stocks, supplies, you name it, everything. The good thing about this is that RC has a really good knowledge of that study. They know everything there is to know about it, and they're a single point of contact for the docs, for the patients, for the sponsors. The challenges that can sometime or did happen to occur with that is that can also create an imbalanced work distribution, meaning we all know that studies wax and wane. You might be really busy with a study, or you might have 2 starting up at the same time, or you might be recruiting actively for 2 studies and testing while your colleague is in a little bit of a lull and not really doing that much and maybe waiting for their study to start up, or it's closing out or whatever. So somebody might be really busy and somebody might not be so busy. Another challenge with that was limited cross-cover and coverage and communication with team members. Part of us working in the hybrid model is we weren't always in the office. We weren't readily available. Coupled with when you have 1 RC that's responsible for all aspects of the study, at least in our research group, the RCs tend to be like a little type A. So you want to do everything yourself. You want to manage all the things yourself. You don't really want to ask for help. You just buckle down and do what needs to be. So those are challenges. Okay, so with the pandemic and changing study landscape, the challenges became even more apparent. Still had the imbalanced work distribution, still had, issues with coverage and communication. All of this together, it led to decreased efficiency and a lack of transparency. And what I mean by lack of transparency is more of a situational awareness kind of thing. We were out of the office, right? So I might not cross paths with some of my colleagues for days or even weeks if we were on opposite schedules. We were trying to limit the amount of people in the office, so we didn't limited our exposure to potentially getting COVID. So you didn't really have a good idea what somebody else was working on. All right, our goal: to create an environment in which everyone works together for a common goal, advancing clinical trials to support our patients through improved team dynamics with a shared vision. So our solution to this problem, we totally changed the way we do business as an RC. We went from an individual RC being assigned a study to a team approach. So there would be 3 RCs, generally speaking, assigned to a study, along with 1 Reg C. The Reg C didn't change. There was always 1 Reg C assigned to a study. And the way we did this is, and that process is changing now. We're kind of working on the fine tuning of it, but For the most part, it's one nurse assigned to a study with 2 non-nurse research coordinators. And at the time of startup, we get together, we meet with those 3 people, and we talk about what we'd like to do, what our strengths are, what don't we like to do on a study. So instead of having to do everything, we divvied up the tasks. So for example, I like doing PK studies. I like that very complex, intricate timing of getting samples and PFTs and putting that puzzle together. But I am of the generation that is not savvy at navigating electronic databases. So that was always something that took a huge amount of time for me to learn and frustration. Well, fortunately, we have someone in our group that is a whiz at REDCap and understands this stuff and can knock out data entry in half the time that it would take me. So when we have our meetings, we say, who'd like to do what? And we just negotiate tasks. And it has worked out really well. And the good thing about that is if you have people on the team doing something they really like to do, you have more buy-in. You have, people like what they're doing. They like their job better if they know I don't have to do 2 hours worth of data entry at the end of my study. Makes me a happier person. Huddles, we added huddles. So once a week, there's an hour blocked off on everybody's schedule, the coordinators, regulatory, the docs, and we talk about really anything, but usually what's pertinent to a specific study. So if we have, a patient getting the first dose of something the next day or, coming up, we'll talk about, is everything in place? Do we have our source docs? Is the doc available for a physical exam? Do we have our kits? It's just kind of a fine tuning to make sure we're good to go. It can also be talking about anything to do with the study. If a study's, coming up 4 weeks from now, it might be just an educational session to let everybody in the group know this is coming, this is what we're looking at, these are the obstacles or the problems we see or whatever it needs to be. And there are some weeks where we don't have the huddles. If there's really nothing going on or nothing we need to discuss, we just don't meet. Along with that, we have a weekly meeting with our entire team, the docs, regulatory, RCs, to review all the studies, to just go over that and make sure everything is set for that for the upcoming week, or just to discuss the status of the study, where we are with things. All right, the approach. So we implemented the team approach in September 2021, and we only did this for studies moving forward. We didn't go back and make teams for the studies that were already in progress. And then our RCs were surveyed September 2022. This was anonymous, and I'm going to share the results with you in the next couple slides. All right, colleague and study familiarity improved. So before the team approach, only 1 out of 5 people thought that that was working well. After the team approach, 4 out of 5 of our RCs thought that was working very well. And familiarity with the studies, before the team approach, only 2 out of 5 thought that it was working well. Afterwards, everybody thought it was working well. And I can speak to that personally because I, like probably most people, I only cared about my studies. I just didn't have the bandwidth to really know what was going on in any kind of detail with other studies. We work in silos. So with the team approach, you learn more about more studies and what everybody's doing. So it made a big difference. Okay, previously identifying challenges also improved. Efficiency, team dynamics, distribution of workload, communication with the team, everything improved across the board. These were the results from the survey. So, of course, with any change that's introduced, there's going to be new challenges that come along, things we might, not have anticipated as much. Communication with sponsors, I'll start with that. When you have a team working, there are basically 3 people that can be communicated with or might be reaching out to sponsors. Generally, the person that is entering our info into the electronic database, she's also handling queries. So a sponsor might reach out to me, but I'm not doing queries, so I have to, communicate with that person. So we just had to like fine tune the communication a little bit. Transparency, as I've mentioned before, meaning again, more awareness. It was even more challenging to be aware what everybody else was doing in relation to what you're doing. So in order to try to work on some of these challenges we were having, we ended up making more clearly defined roles about who was doing what. So that helped everybody to be more on the same page. We also experienced improvements in individual study tasks, not just the process. So before the team approach with startup, 2 out of our 5 people thought that things were working well afterwards. Startup, which I think is probably the most challenging part of a research study, that improved across the board. Everybody agreed that it was a much easier, smoother process. Recruitment didn't really change that much because usually the lead RC is the one doing most of the recruitment before the team and after the team. Study visits, data management, and closeout, those all improved across the board. You had 3 people sharing the load on these tests, not just one. And here's some of the quotes that some of our RCs have said. I have a better understanding of all studies in our center since we started the team model. The team model allowed me to get to know my coworkers better. I can really vouch for that because I'm a CF coordinator. But we work with asthma coordinators too, and talk about working in a silo. I mean, I know they're there, but I didn't really know what any of them were doing. Well, now they're on my team, and I'm on their team. So much better understanding and relationship building with that. Success of the team model depends on clear delegation and communication. So this was really important, and we're also in the process now of making very clear roles, who is doing what, and trying to make that, incorporate that into each team. So role number 1, maybe you're the lead RC and you're doing study visits. Role number 2, maybe you're scheduling, ordering supplies, I don't know, whatever else we do. Role number 3, you're doing the EDC, you're answering queries. And then trying to plug people in more into these defined roles. Another couple quotes, the team model allowed me to see other team members' strengths. That became very apparent. You guys probably all know there's certain things you like to do and certain things you don't like to do, or certain things you're better at or not better at. So if you can plug the person in that likes to do something and is good at it with their job on the study, it's good for everybody. The team model allows a bit of flexibility because we know we have each other's back. Yet instead of managing that load and all the responsibility myself, I've got 2 other people in it with me that are invested in wanting it to be successful. Study execution is more efficient when tasks are assigned according to RC skill sets. I already said that. Okay, conclusions. A team approach to studies can allow teams to get to know each other better and improve knowledge of all the studies occurring at your site. The team approach can improve efficiency by allowing team members to focus on their strengths and areas of interest. Although communication among team members may improve, caution must be taken to ensure good communication with sponsors and clear delegation or responsibility so tasks are not missed. And what I will say is I cannot imagine going back to the way we did things before this team model. It has may sound dramatic, but it changed my life in terms of like how much I like my job. And I think I speak for the rest of my coworkers right there, that we all really love this model. So that concludes my presentation.
Very great job. We have a few questions for you. Does your site have a plan for turnover with these siloed approaches to studies? And does the training still happen to everyone?
That's a couple questions. So with the team model, it's not a siloed approach. I don't think it was more of a siloed approach when it was one RC on it. So now with 3 of us with turnover, there's 2 other people on the team that are familiar with the study, and they can usually, we haven't had turnover, I'll say that. That's another great thing about my site. But in theory, if somebody leaves, the other 2 people on the team can carry on. And if they can't, we would probably pull someone from another team to try to step in and help with that. And I can't remember the other question.
Oh, everyone still has
Training.
training.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's, everybody has to be on the delegation log, and everybody has to do the required training. However, the 3 people on the team are going to be the experts on that study.
And I believe you said it, but each study still has a lead RC, correct?
Yeah, within the team, there's always an identified lead RC.
And what challenges did your team face with the change in the workload as the RCs were assigned to more studies?
Yeah, that's a good question. So that's starting to happen now. So after COVID, I mean, I'm sure you guys all experienced the same thing. We were slow. There wasn't much going on. Well, now it's really picking up and ramping up. So we haven't gotten to the point yet where I think anybody on any of the teams feels like, you know, this is too much. I'm not sure, you know, how much I can manage. What I can tell you personally is that I can manage many more studies now with this model than I could manage previously. So it's a very positive model. I think it will help us, all of us, be able to manage and take on a lot more studies and do a lot more.
How many studies did each coordinator and Reg C have on average at one time?
I mean, that's, I cannot give like a definite answer to that. Let me think what I have right now. I don't even know. I probably have 4 active studies, and I have 3 or 4 out in the pipeline on their way, which of course, you know, my fear is they're all going to start at the same time, right? Don't we all kind of worry about that? But I think, like I said, it's a work in progress. So we'll see, you know, if I have 2 studies that might be starting up at the same time with my team, then we'll probably make a little trade, you know, maybe somebody that's not as busy, maybe their team will take it over. So there isn't a set number of how many studies we can manage. It's a situational kind of a way of deciding that.
I think we have time for, maybe 2 more questions. How do you ensure that the team members still have some level of experience across all the responsibilities, like the EDC and...
Right. Well, so the teams fluctuate between different studies. So I might have a team where Tia is doing one thing on the study, and Rebecca is doing another thing on the study, and that'll be for my particular study. But then Cindy, one of my coworkers, will have a study, and she'll have Emily, and we have 2 Lauras in our group too. So Laura number 2 might be on that. So everybody has a chance to move into different roles of their liking on each particular study. So for example, if I'm assigned to be on a team with the asthma group, I don't really know asthma. I mean, I'm learning it. So chances are I wouldn't be the lead on that study. I'm probably not going to be doing the study visits. I'm going to be doing something else. So I'm going to learn how to do different things based on what's needed for that study. Does that make sense?
Okay, and the last one. With the team model, does the total RC time to finish, such as like visit efficiency, a visit increase, decrease, or stay the same? And if so, is there an increase in like budget planning?
I really can't speak to budgets. I think it makes everything more efficient. If I'm doing the study visit, I only have to do the study visit. My partner on the team, she's processing and she's shipping out samples. My other partner on the team is doing the EDC. So if anything, it makes it less time consuming than more. doing it like this.
Now, we're going to see, you're going to be back next year, right, Laura? You're going to be presenting next year too, right? Now you know. Now you've done it? Yes? No, that's not a thing. That's not a thing. Absolutely not.
You did too great of a job.
Right? Right? You've obviously been mentored well by the great Nate Hilliard. I am proud to announce Laura number 2. And also proud that she's a member of my team at the Medical College of Wisconsin, Children's Wisconsin in Milwaukee.
Good morning. As Teresa said, my name is Laura Roth. I work at the Medical College of Wisconsin in Milwaukee, but we're really in Children's Wisconsin, the building. I look forward to presenting to you for our best practices for the annual, for the patient registry from consent to annual review. Sorry. I'm nervous too, and this is my second time. I have no relationships to disclose other than Teresa stealing my thunder and mentioning that we work together. I was going to say that my manager's looking over my shoulder right now. So, as I'm sure you all know, the CF Foundation Patient Registry collects health information for people with CF. This information is used for patient care, quality improvement, and research. In 2016, we audited the Port CF consent and enrollment process at our site to assess for integrity and compliance. We continue to implement and improve that process. I can just hit it here, right? Okay. In 2012, I became the Children's Wisconsin Patient Registry Coordinator. At our site, we treat the patient registry like it's a research study. The registry needs consent and data entered, so who better than a research coordinator to get the job done? I started my research career doing mostly regulatory work, so I worked primarily in the office and had dedicated time for the registry. As the registry coordinator at our site, I managed enrollment and did all the data entry at that time. As you can see from the graph, data entry was done in a timely manner until 2014. I named this event Johanna. In May of 2014, I went out on maternity leave, and our nurse practitioner covered the Port CF data entry while I was gone. She was someone who was in clinic most days and didn't have a lot of dedicated time in the office to complete data entry. So the timeliness of our data entry did go down a bit until I came back. I was able to catch up, and the timeliness of our data entry continued until 2018 when our other research coordinator left our site. At this time, I became our primary study coordinator while still doing the registry. So I didn't have a lot of time to focus on the data entry every day because I spent a lot of my time in clinic or in our research unit. This is when we decided to focus on our data entry process to ensure accurate information is always entered in a timely manner. This is essential to the CF Foundation and to our care team. In 2020, when we hired our new research coordinator, who's right there in the front, if you have any questions, feel free to ask Danielle. In 2020, when we hired our new research coordinator, our site created 2 roles for the Port CF management: a research coordinator for primary data entry and registry coordinator for oversight. And I know in the last presentation, Reg C stood for regulatory coordinator, so I'm just pointing that out in here that means registry coordinator for this presentation. So the registry coordinator manages our consent and enrollment logs in both Excel and the electronic medical record. The Excel spreadsheet is a great tool for pre-visit planning. At our weekly care team meeting, she identifies who needs consent for things like new enrollment, changing guardianship, or age of majority. The enrollment list in the electronic medical record is great for when a patient is added on to clinic after that weekly meeting. We can see in the patient's medical record if they're enrolled in the registry. We also can be alerted when a patient turns 18 and needs age of majority consent. It is the research coordinator who obtains consent from the patients, but the registry coordinator will help if she's unable to be in clinic. As part of the 2016 consent process audit, our site developed a consent review form that is completed by both of our roles. This is to ensure that only properly consented patients are enrolled in the Port CF database. The research coordinator completes the top half of the form, documenting that the consent was obtained properly. The registry coordinator reviews the consent documentation to ensure that the right forms and all the signatures were obtained. She fills out the bottom half of the form to confirm completeness of the consents. It is only after the registry coordinator reviews the consent forms that she will enroll the patient in Port CF. At the time of the enrollment, the registry coordinator uploads a copy of the consent forms and all diagnostic documentation into Port CF. The enrollment logs are then updated. As stated earlier, the research coordinator does the data entry at our site. The registry coordinator will help when the research coordinator is out of the office to ensure that there's no lapse in data entry. Encounters are opened by the research coordinator the Friday after each visit. This is done at that time because the patient's experience of care surveys are distributed after encounters are open, and we want our patients to receive those surveys as soon as possible. The actual data entry is done the week following all of our visits. This gives providers time to complete clinic notes, for culture results to be finalized, except for, of course, mycobacterium cultures, and basically just ensure that all data is in the electronic medical record at the time of data entry. Also, any information that is in the annual review that is collected during visit, like a chest x-ray, is entered into the annual review right after it's done. At our site, it is important to have as much information entered after each visit because Port CF patient summary reports run by our research coordinator are used by our care team at our pre-visit planning meetings every week. During these meetings is determined who needs to see which patients based on these Port CF reports. This is also an opportunity for QI and QA of outlier data. Before each meeting, our research coordinator pre-reviews the patient reports to identify any outliers, like if the graphs look wonky or anything. Also during the meetings, our care team might point out something that looks wrong, like if labs are missing, they might tell us, the patient had labs this year, and then we'll double check in the EMR just to confirm that that's correct, and we'll enter that correct data. Also, the registry coordinator runs data analysis reports in Port CF and CF Smart reports throughout the year to confirm or correct any missing data, like test results or consults from team members. At year end, the registry coordinator runs Port CF incomplete records reports to confirm encounters, episodes, and annual reviews are completed before database lock. She will complete any data entry for any open records. Once all records are marked complete, she'll run one last analysis report to confirm no data is missing. The registry coordinator maintaining or managing enrollment ensures that only properly consented patients are added to Port CF and reconsent is obtained when needed before any additional data is entered. This has resulted in continued regulatory compliance. The research coordinator completing data entry within a week of each study visit is invaluable to our care team and the CF Foundation. It ensures up-to-date reports for QI, research queries, and patient review. As you can see, we continue to complete our data entry in a timely manner, even through COVID. Entering annual review data throughout the year has proven to make database lock less burdensome for our site. Using Port CF patient summary reports as a pre-visit planning tool allows team to prepare for our upcoming visits and helps ensure data accuracy and completeness. The registry coordinator running data analysis reports throughout the year and after all records are closed helps maintain the quality of our data collection. The registry coordinator assisting with data entry at database lock has been crucial to maintaining timely data entry without overwhelming the research coordinator as she continues to enter data for the new year. The separate registry coordinator and research coordinator roles has been beneficial to our Port CF process. It has created a sustainable process to maintain a compliant, up-to-date, and accurate database. We will continue to look for ways to improve our Port CF process to ensure that our care team and the CF Foundation has quality data in a timely manner. Thank you. Any questions for Danielle?
I have a question.
Sure.
So you said that you guys reconsent for age of majority, but do you consent for, or do you assent when you don't assent?
No, we don't, not reassent,
Uh-huh.
and that's not the right word, but no, we don't assent unless they're at that age when they first come to us.
Our institution doesn't have an assent at age of.
I
Okay.
don't know if you can hear Teresa, and can you guys hear Teresa? Our institution doesn't have a requirement to approach children when they reach assent age, if they're already enrolled. Unless it's a clinical trial, that's
Yeah, we
different.
do. And another question, anybody that does registry, do you help with the annual reviews?
Yes, well, most of the annual review data is actually done like throughout the year. You know, if a patient has a chest x-ray, it's marked in the annual review. If they have labs, it's marked in the annual review, even if it's March. So, you know, third quarter comes along, they have their flu shot, the annual reviews can pretty much be completed unless, like, you know, something's pending. So yes, I will, if it's still open at the end of the year, because maybe they didn't have their flu shot until, you know, December 31st or whatever, then I will help with completing the annual reviews.
It doesn't look like there's any more questions.
Can you talk a little bit more? Well, I'm going to pick on you.
You know the answers.
Can you talk a little bit maybe about some of the other reports and stuff that you run throughout the year to like making sure that people are meeting the milestones that they're required?
Right.
our
Well, a lot of our reports are based on some of the things that are in the patient or the annual report that the providers get at the end of the year, we all get. So we've always run reports for like, have they had 4 visits, however many PFTs and cultures, you know, they're supposed to get. Have they had their labs? Have they seen a social worker? Have they seen the dietitian? Do they need anything? I mean, even we use it, do they need anything? You know, if they haven't had their flu shot, should we be calling them to have their flu shot? That kind of thing we've done. Does that answer your question? There's a lot of reports. Danielle? Do you want to come up and talk? I can tell you how I handled it when I was a registry coordinator. Yeah, I can repeat it.
So what I'm the following week, generally, because but when they're admitted, they're coming to clinic first. Sometimes not, but generally like the following week, when I am entering that visit and I see that they were hospitalized, I start that. So following the follow-up visit that they have, I can finish up the hospitalization. And we always just remember to put it in that way.
And obviously, it shows up in the incomplete records report that there's an episode open. If for whatever reason it doesn't get closed, they don't follow up.
Monday mornings, I also like to check if I learned that they're on the weekend, which is why I'm aware of that. I'll check everything that we do.
At our site, we have a list in our electronic medical record that has all of our CF patients in it, and you can sort by, like, part of it is like admission, like room number. So you can quick look at that report and see that somebody's in the hospital. Like it'll kind of flag that there's somebody in the hospital. So that's an easy way that we are able to see if someone's hospitalized if they aren't coming through clinic. Thank you.
All right, and last but not least, and not a Laura or a Katie, we have Alex Wilson also from National Jewish, and she's going to tell us part 2 of the story that Katie started. So excited about that.
Hi, I am Alex Wilson. I work with Katie at National Jewish Health in Denver. And thank you for having us. I'm happy to discuss our efforts to engage our providers in research discussions with people with CF at clinical visits. Okay, cool. All right, here we go. I have no relationships to disclose. So the past several years, our quality improvement goals have built off a central theme to increase awareness of and participation in clinical trials at our site. Past efforts have included research coordinator outreach and mutation education in clinic. Review of TDN metrics indicate we may lag in the percent of newly enrolled people with CF into a foundation-sanctioned clinical trial. However, review of a registry report measuring whether a person has participated in a research study, including those sanctioned or not, you'll see participation in research is actually quite robust. So this table compares the percent of people who have participated in research within the past 10 years at our site. The interventional studies are blue, an observational study is orange, and those who participated in both interventional or observational is gray. So availability of high enrolling observational studies such as survey or one-time sample collection studies has kept people engaged in research. Yet, participation in research and interventional studies has declined since 2016, and this is not for a lack of available trials, even during the pandemic. So there are still a large number of people eligible for trials that are not enrolled. And I'll point out too that probably some of this decrease is also related to the growth in our total patient population at our site, as Katie pointed out earlier. So who are those not participating in clinical trials? So I reviewed this year's January TDN Town Hall and the TDN Spring Meeting presentations, compiling a list that people not participating in research may fall into. It's hard to move this thing around, sorry. So first, I will talk about the vulnerable populations that include those that are of non-white race and/or ethnicity, those that are not fluent in the language the study is being conducted, those that may be socially economically disadvantaged, have lower overall health status, and as Patty pointed out yesterday at the TDN meeting, that people with CF are just a vulnerable population just because they have CF. And the clinical team pointed out when I was preparing for this conversation that they wanted me to make sure to point out that the LGBTQIA+ groups are also part of this population and groups that they're seeing much more often at clinic visits. And as Dr. Taylor Kauser did a very good job of explaining why people of vulnerable groups may have a distrust of the medical system overall. So vulnerable populations require more time to feel comfortable participating in a study, which is why we need providers to have research discussions. So these groups need to build trust to be engaged, and people trust their CF providers. So other factors include not meeting eligibility criteria because of rare CF mutations or having low lung function, despite having interest in research participation. The person may have a history of poor clinical adherence, which is possibly biasing us to reach out to them to participate. And the one I really want to point out here is that focus group participants indicated they were not participating in research because they weren't being asked. So as study teams, we cannot assume that because they live 200 miles away, as they might in Colorado, or because they're a working mom with 2 kids, that they won't want to participate. Or because they declined participation in a previous study, that they won't want to participate in the current trial that we're recruiting for. So we need to ask. And something I tell my kids all the time, even though my son says, "Mom, I know you're going to say no," I always tell him, well, the answer is always going to be no unless you ask me. Usually he's pleasantly surprised. So the TDN Town Hall in January indicated that people with CF want information to come directly from their care provider, sometimes the research team, and they want the information portrayed in a meaningful way. So a review of some non-CF literature indicates that Your physician was noted as the most trusted source of health information. A Research American poll notes that 80% of 1,000 respondents indicate a physician's recommendation is an important deciding factor to participate. Yet, just 22% of patients said a healthcare provider talked with them about research. And NIH reports that 77% of those that participate in a clinical trial learn it from their provider. So as Katie discussed earlier, our QI goal this year was to rebuild a culture of research. She pointed out a slide that discussed culture of research and how teams may be addressing it. And the research QI team decided we also wanted to understand how often providers discuss research with their patients in a clinical care setting. So for this QI project, we added one question to that quiz or to the survey just for the providers. And these providers are 6 pulmonologists, 1 psychologist, and 2 nurse practitioners. And the aim of this QI project is to increase the frequency of provider-patient research discussions in the clinical care setting. So the question asked to just the care providers at the same time as the larger survey was, when do you talk to your patients about clinical research? Never, at every clinic visit, when I'm the PI for the study, when the patient brings it up, when I know or when I think there is a potential study for my patient. Providers could select more than one answer. So the good news is that none of the providers said that they never talk about research with their patients. So the 2 areas we felt we could impact are when I know and when I think there is a potentially eligible trial for a patient. It is our job as the research team to inform providers of what trials are available to their patients. They don't know all that is available and at what state of activity a trial might be in. Also, we felt we could target improved communication between the RC and the PI to encourage the PI to discuss their own trials with potential participants at their clinic visits. And I think this has been a common theme because Katie mentioned it and also Laura mentioned it too. Katie 1 and Laura 1. So we used 4 main strategies to address this. So the first is the Research Education Board. And as Katie mentioned, the board is located in the clinic workroom to keep all the clinical team members informed of what studies are currently available. So the study spotlight provides basic information about a study the research team has chosen to highlight for a period of time. It includes the study aim, the PI, basic inclusion and exclusion information, such as CF mutations, lung function requirements, or specific microbiology the protocol is targeting. As well, it also includes what the clinical team can do to help the research team, such as notify the RC of someone interested in a study with a certain FEV1 or with a certain microbiology that we're looking for. There's also the list of all actively recruiting studies with the name of the study and how we, the research team, refer to it. So we don't refer to the protocol number CF123-001. We usually give it some sort of nickname, and we often forget that the clinical team doesn't know what that nickname means. So this is a place for them to look at that. On the list is also very basic information about the study and which RC to contact with questions about a potential participant. So next is the pre-clinic meeting, and you've seen a similar picture to this. This meeting has been occurring regularly for about 7 years, but the pandemic forced us to transition to online meetings, where it has remained because people can attend from wherever they are. So at this meeting, the research team is given a chance to update the clinical team on who will be attending research visits, to provide any pertinent updates about those visits, and then to coordinate as needed. So if the person needs clinical labs, and oftentimes we gently nudge the research participant to please go to clinic because oftentimes they don't as much as they should. This is a time to identify also whether there is a person coming to clinic who may be eligible for a trial, encouraging even a small discussion about the study between the provider and the patient. The lead RC will also review the study spotlight with the clinical team, maybe the first 1 or 2 weeks that the spotlight is up on the board. And then also to shamelessly provide reminders about eligibility criteria for other clinical trials that are enrolling. So if my clinical team doesn't know to contact me about a woman who is pregnant, I've not done my job. They hear that almost every time. So 2 other small but not insignificant strategies are one-on-one meetings between the lead RC and the PI, similar to Katie's huddles. This is a chance for the team to get, or for the PI and the RC to get to know each other, especially the newer RCs, and discuss potentially eligible participants, as well as what is and what is not working with current recruitment strategies. And lastly, a flyer with a QR code that is available in all clinic rooms and other places in clinic. So this QR code goes to a red cap questionnaire that asks people, and it's targeted for potential participants, or so clinic people with CF, how they prefer to be notified that they may qualify for a study. So do they prefer to be notified by a text, email, phone call? And then what types of studies they will have interest in. So to be honest, very few people have scanned this QR code, but it is a reminder to patients and to the clinical team that research is available to all people attending clinic. So the survey was administered a second time. Good news again, none of the providers said that they never talk about research. But a couple of interesting changes did occur. Let me get to this. Laser pointer. All right. All right, so the reminder that they can choose more than one answer. So the number of providers that said that they talk about research at every clinic visit stayed the same. But something interesting here is that one of the providers moved out of talking about research at every clinic visit, and another provider moved into talking about research at every visit. And PIs may have had a trial open during the time between the questionnaires, between the 2 questionnaires, and this is what we think may have owed to why a couple people are more likely to discuss research when they are the PI, as well as being reminded in the one-on-one meetings with the lead RC. Thinking that there is a potential study available increased by 1, but not knowing with certainty whether someone is eligible is okay. So that is why that again is the research team's job to confirm a person's eligibility. And we need the provider and the clinical team's help to notify people in clinic that they may be eligible. And we feel that the knowing of a study changed for a couple of reasons. So that's this one. 1 was RC turnover, and 2, studies that started and stopped from pre to post survey makes it hard for the provider to keep track of all of the enrolling trials and where they're at. And then again, discussing with the providers in preparation for this talk, they noted that how they answered when the patient brings it up is more a matter of patients bringing up research 30 to 40% of the time in clinic, rather than they only talk to the person 30 to 40% of the time after they bring up research, which is definitely reassuring. Turn this on. Okay. So providers were able to make comments on the survey. So here are just a few of them and these are both from pre and post survey. So I'm going to be starting up at the top in the green and then moving clockwise around here. So I tend to recruit for my own studies as I feel I can speak to those more in depth. And I discuss research, if they feel frustrated with treatment options and are wondering what else is out there that could help address their specific medical issues. And I always figure someone else probably asked them. This is certainly the provider to target and have one-on-one visits with. I think it is important to talk about research, but as a provider, the first thing I focus on is the care plan for the patient. So likely this is one of the providers that's waiting for the person to bring it up in the clinical visit, to bring research up in the clinic visit. And a lot of the time, research discussions happen when their lung function is dropping and there are no other treatments. And since there are now flyers in the clinic about CF research, so the QR code flyer, it has been a reminder to me to tell patients about research. So there is definitely a lot more that we can do to encourage providers to discuss research in clinic. Some of our next steps will certainly be to identify vulnerable and underrepresented groups and define how we can get them more engaged. I'll point out at the end, but I think the answer is probably asking. So I definitely want to keep a tick and tally of which providers reach out about potentially eligible participants. And more importantly, I want to keep track of how many of those people they reached out about actually enrolled into a trial. And then we want to consider a survey of research participants to ask how they heard about the current trial that they're enrolled in, and then how they prefer to hear about trials that they may be eligible for in the future. So some conclusions. In my opinion, the preclinic meetings and individual PI-RC correspondence are crucial for raising awareness. Enrolling into clinical trials with more complex eligibility criteria, as well into genetic therapies, will require the efforts of all people on the clinical and research teams. Vulnerable populations may be less proactive in asking about research on their own, which is why all of us must remember to ask people to participate in available trials. And physicians are a trusted source of information about research. So I'll end with the point that research teams and clinical care providers can work together to build trust and provide resources to address barriers of participation in clinical research. So I want to I have all of these people to thank, but I want to send a special thank you to Rachel and Sam, my research coordinators, for working incredibly hard the last 3 months and doing so with a very positive attitude and always reaching out for help when they need it. And then to Katie for always keeping an eye on QI. And then all of the research coordinators that I work with, and certainly all of the providers that answered the survey.
Great talk.
Thanks.
We have a couple questions. What does the QR code lead to? I know you said that there was one that goes to REDCap, but is there?
Yes. So first of all, we did talk with our IRB people to get the ability to do the QR code to make sure that it wasn't considered research and all of that. So we did a research engagement for that to define it as QI. And it does go to the REDCap. And eventually we want it to go to our marketing website that has all of our available trials for CF so they can see other trials. That involves getting all of the marketing tiles up onto the website, which is no easy task.
No.
But, yeah.
And do all of your providers do research?
Not all of our providers do research. Many of them do. But then we also have providers that do more of the lab research and bench research, and then those that are in the clinical research. We have 3 main PIs, 4 main PIs that are doing clinical research. Is that right, Katie? Yeah, okay, okay.
For the meetings and the check-ins and kind of is for everybody, the huddles, do you do some of them like remotely if the provider's on campus and the coordinators, wouldn't be coming to campus that day? Would you do that by?
Yes, that could definitely be done by Zoom. And we also have, so we have a preclinic meeting, we have Monday huddles with just the RCs, and then there's a bi-weekly or twice a month, however that term is, a CF research team meeting where all of the PIs and all of the RCs and the registry coordinators are on that. And then there's the one-on-one check-ins with the PIs and RCs.
And this looks like more of a comment. At our clinic, we have a whiteboard with patient names, with the provider and ancillary staff members that are seeing the patient. The research team has a column on the whiteboard, so we label the board so the provider knows which patient is eligible for trials. I don't know if you guys do that. We do that at ours too.
We have tried similar things in the past, but I feel like now it's been a matter, so we have the whiteboard as well. So there's the research education board in the clinic, and then on that wall is their clinical board. So we'll mention in the pre-clinic meeting that I want to see so-and-so about blank study, and then we can go and put our name next to that person, and so they'll know not to let the person go until one of us are able to come down and talk with them. And then they'll text us to say, okay, come on down or whatever, instead of having to hang out in clinic and loiter
Absolutely.
forever. Yeah. Cool, thank you.
Thank you.
So that's it. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Have a great rest of your day. I also wanted to just thank, Patty and Jill and Candy. I know a lot of work went into putting all this stuff together, and for always making this space for research is really valuable. So thank you to you guys. Thank you.